Okay, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining me. I am super excited about this topic because it feels like it should be easy, right? I mean, setting up a preschool classroom. I feel like preschool classrooms specifically are even harder than a lot of other classrooms because we're trying to fit lots of different centers in there, right? Oh, yeah, people are saying, I'm a changer, change it up, more fun. It is more fun in my opinion, but, I've worked with a lot of teachers that like things to stay even keel, and if that's what works for you and you feel like it's what's best for your students, then awesome. Lots of little ones, Cindy says. Yeah, little changes are good, right? Okay, so today, set up your preschool classrooms in 4 steps. So when I first started teaching preschool, see, in first grade, I feel like the setup was way different because we didn't have a lot of centers. But when I first started setting up my classroom in a preschool setting, holy moly, did I move that thing around like 500 times. I kid you not. Our director walked in and was like, what are you doing? I was just standing there, like looking around. It was rough, y'all. I was like, well, I want this over here, but that doesn't work here because of this. And it was a mess. And so like I'm a paper pencil type of girl. So when I got a problem, I'm like wanting to write it all out, figure it all out, sketch it all out in my map. So that's what I did. And I kind of came up with like this step system that I found that I actually do and didn't realize I was doing it. And so when I had other teachers ask me like, how do you go about setting up your classroom? Like, how do you know which centers to put where? I was like, I do kind of have a plan. Like, even though when I was standing there looking around my classroom, like I was like deer in the headlights, I did walk myself through a plan. I kind of made this plan up. So I'm hoping to share it with you, and I'm hoping that it will help you think about some factors maybe that you hadn't thought about when setting your classroom up. Because a lot of people are like, okay, go set your classroom up. Like, how hard is that? Well, my husband's a middle school teacher. So for him, it doesn't look like a whole lot, right? He's actually the computer teacher. So he's got the desks and the computers, and we do his bulletin boards, and that's kind of it, right? And then in the elementary setting, I did have a lot to set up. We had like, all our classroom library and all this, but preschool is a whole nother level because I was trying to figure out how to get all these centers in this one room, and that was not an easy task. And so let's go ahead and get started. So step number 1 that I found helps me is to first inventory the furniture. When I first came to where I work now, there wasn't a ton, and it was kind of like a, well, if you need something, check this room, the supply room. You got a supply room where you just kind of go see what's in there and see if it's something you can use or not. And so I kind of had to go through and just list, like, I have this shelf, I have this rolly cart. And a lot of the rolly carts, I made mine. I have these pull-out drawers. I have this tub. I have this like little old school desk. I have these shelves. Like, it's just a Mod Podge, and it still is to this day. Like, I envy the schools that are able to like just outfit their whole classrooms and their whole schools with like amazing furniture. That just wasn't what was going to happen. We were a non-for-profit, and so that just wasn't going to happen. So I knew that I was going to have to just really get creative, and that's okay. And so first thing I did was just inventory every piece of furniture or organizational something that I can use, because then I kind of knew like what I had to work with. So that was step 1, and that was a pretty easy step. But that brings me to step 2. So listing the areas that you need. And this is really where you're going to go into like, I want a circle time rug or a whole group rug. So I got to have that area. I got to have a cubbies. If you keep your like bags and jackets in your room, you're going to have a spot for that. I luckily have a spot outside the door, and we have a place to put our lunch boxes because my friends bring lunches. So a place for that. Which centers do I want? Right? Where's my small group table going to go? What are all the areas that you need to have in your classroom to be successful? Is it like a quiet down area? Just so many different things. Maybe there's some things that you are required to have in your classroom. Think about all those and list them so that you can get a clear list of, hey, I need all these areas, and how am I going to make them work together? Because it really stinks to like set up everything and then go, oh, great. Like, I totally forgot the library. We kind of need a literacy center because that's where our books are housed, right? So first list out your furniture, then list out the needed areas. And if you know me, I am weird and I love like little workbooky fill in the blanks. So of course I made one, and it's called the Setting Up, help if you could see it, Setting Up Your Preschool Classroom Workbook. And so these steps are in here. And so step 1, inventory of the furniture. List those puppies out. And then step 2 is what we're on now. List your areas needed. And up here it gives you ideas like, is the centers, carpet area, lineup spots, right? Maybe you need that like long area for children to be able to line up in, large table, cubbies, all the things. So list out everything you need so that you really have a good idea of what furniture I have and what I need to figure out how I can use this furniture. So in this step, I also wanted to go through some of the centers that I have. I have went through, sorry, there's hair, blech. I have went through several different centers in the past, but there's some that we all generally have. And I just want to kind of show you how I've found through the years that works for me, just to give you some ideas. So let me go through the center breakdown here. So my art center is working really well for me, so I probably won't be changing that up this coming year. I've got an art cart, Mr. Rolly McRollerson right here, and he's awesome. He houses everything. I love him because I can take out, like, let's say my students aren't ready for a certain thing, like maybe dot painters, which are down here in this blue one. I'll shank that out and I'll store it, and so they don't have access to it. And it keeps the art table clutter free because I used to like keep it all up here and like in little organizational things. But I just found the students just threw it all back in there. They weren't really paying attention. This has been super helpful. I love this Rolly guy. And so, Maria's asking, can you share? Yes, there's a link to this workbook. There's a link to the workbook. It should be in the description of this post right now. If it's not, let me know and I'll make sure to get that. So he is super helpful because the children can take out what they need and then they have pictures so they can put them back. And this next picture, I also have an easel. So like this is the other side. And so here's the easel. And generally what I do with the easel is I choose every week like a different medium to put on it, if that makes sense. And so like maybe one day is chalk with dark colored paper. Another day is watercolors. Another day is, gosh, I can't, like the paint sticks, tempera paint sticks. Just I try to do lots of variations and lots of tools so that they can use them, and I find that works pretty well. So, oh, thank you, Jennifer. You are awesome. She dropped that link for you. So that's working really well for me, and I don't know if you can see it in the other picture. Nope, you can't. But right above this is like the drying rack. So it works out really well. That's probably not going to change. And so if your art center is feeling messy, you might look into like a drawer like this. It's on my blog, www.lovelycommotion.com, the art center blog. And I have these labels for free too, which I can link to later. All right. So art center, a definite yes, right? We all need a place for them to be creative, and I love offering them lots of choices when they're ready for them. I slowly build that up because some of them don't know how to use them yet. I haven't taught how to use certain things yet. So, very helpful. Block center. We all have a block center. This is a super fave. This one, when I took this picture, I had this for like, it's one of those corner ones. It's one of my nicest pieces of furniture. I absolutely love it. At this point I had it here and there was like a rug and then there's tile down there. I don't have it like that anymore. I don't overly love it. I actually have it pushed up against my big, large circle time rug so that when they're building with those wooden blocks and they fall, they don't make near the amount of noise. And I'm using my circle time rug for like dual purpose, right? Because during centers, we're not over there, so they can use it to build on. So this is actually moved. This is an old picture. I couldn't find a new one. And then the drama center, which is a big old favorite in my classroom because I make a point to change it up every month. We do different, I don't know if you can see it, like during the winter time, we have a winter wonderland where they can pretend skate in their socks, and they can scoop some of that fluff that you put inside of, pillows. My mom uses it. I don't know. And you can scoop that up and pretend it's snow, and we can make little snowmen, and it's just super fun. So this is always busy because I'm always changing it up for them. Like we've done a vet clinic, an airport. It's just lots of things. So I give this a lot of space in my classroom, and I give it a corner kind of away from everything else because it is a busy hub of happiness over there, and I love it. So Drama Center, I combined my library and my alphabet center just because I found that, quite frankly, all the alphabet activities were quiet, and library is quiet, and books you see letters, and it all goes together. So up above I have different puzzles and games, matching games, some lacing letters, some rocks that I wrote letters on, those popsicles. You can't see it very well, but those popsicles that's got like the uppercase A and the lowercase a, and they put them together. They love those things. And then down below, I've got some reading buddies and a comfy spot to sit, and I change out the books, right? And so this center is a very quiet place. This actually acts as my quiet place as well because they know that that's a place that they can go to chill. And then my Play-Doh center. I know not everybody has a Play-Doh center, but I like to make sure that I am giving them that opportunity all the time. And I use this as another like quiet area because they can kind of go, if they want to be left alone, they can go and they can grab a tray off the top shelf. It's just one of those plastic craft trays. It's an awesome thing if you don't use that. It keeps the mess in there because how sometimes Play-Doh like dries in these clumps and then it's like all over the table and you have to wipe it off. Well, I taught them how to use it on the tray, and then after they put the Play-Doh away, go dump the tray into the trash can. So awesome. And so I found that I didn't really have a place for my Play-Doh center, so I just put it in a rolly cart and I let them bring it over to our whole group table. We don't use the whole entire table for small group, and so the end I designate for you guys to use down here. And it's a very quiet activity because most of the time they're just kind of in their own zone using the Play-Doh. So it's another area they can go like, I just need to go chill by myself, or I might suggest them use the Play-Doh center if I notice that they're getting upset with their friends or they just need a little break. So that's been helpful too because it's a mobile center, and you can put it away if you need to or not bring it out quite in the beginning of the year if you don't want to. It has Play-Doh tub. These are like those stampers from Lakeshore. God, they were expensive, but I really do love them. And they just like stamp into the dough to make the letters and the numbers. And then there's tools, just, rolling pins and scissors and things like that. And then cookie cutters. So that was super, super easy rolly cart to put together. I also have a science center, and this one is set up for colors. I try to change it out about every month. So like it might be colors, it might be motion. They might be learning about fall fruit. They might be learning about sink and float. And so I have these already done, which has been a really big time saver. And so I just hang up the things, add the things in, and then my science center is ready for them. This has been a big game changer because the science center was really hard for me to set up at first. It didn't make sense to me, and doing it this way makes sense to my brain, and they seem to love being able to explore the different types of science. So that is, and it's basically just on like an old desk. Like for some reason in my classroom there was an old desk, like a school desk that was just in there, and so I use it, right? And so I just set everything up on top, and then it has the little hole in the desk so I can put some tubs in there if I need to. Works. It's small. Not everything I found needs to be grand. They tend to love it. And the science center isn't one that I have a ton of kids going to at once. So having one desk usually accommodates at least 2 kids, and that's usually all it needs. Sensory, oh man, do they love the sensory tub. I like to put mine up against the wall like this. I used to turn it the other way. That didn't allow for enough students. So I turned it this way, but I like bumping it up. I've had it like in the middle where kids could all be around it. But that again created a circle for running. And so I like to push that one end up because it gives enough room for at least 3 children, maybe more if they squeeze together. And they all can kind of get in there and have their own space, but 4 seems like too much. So I like leaving that end not even an option. And it plus just makes it a little bit easier to bump it up against the wall and not have a circle for them to run around, that racetrack factor. So sensory tub, ours is just on a stand. I'm not sure where we got this, but fill it with different things every couple weeks. You know how that rolls. Fun things in the sensory center. And then my writing center. My writing center is one that I also change up fairly often. I just like to give them different materials to get their hands in. And so if it involves them using their fine motor skills, I am all about it. So I try to change up things in the writing center as well. And I also have a guide to the centers that I do in my classroom that I will share with you. It's actually in that same link that Jennifer dropped for you guys in the comments. It's also in the description. It has both the setup workbook and it has the center guide. So it just kind of gives you an idea of like, here are the things that I put in there. Here are the benefits of this center, which is also really helpful. And so giving you both those things, giving you some ideas. So you look in there, there's some more ideas for the writing center, but you can see here, like, I think they're called magnet tabs on that very top shelf, the blue thing where it's like magnet and their letters and they stroke over it and all the magnet balls pop up to form that letter. Oh my gosh, those are amazing. The like magnet writing boards, I love those. I like to try to put in a variety of writing tools that maybe they haven't used before, like click pens, highlighters, anything to get them writing. And then I like to use little memo steno pads. I like to sometimes I'll put just blank paper inside of like a pocket folder, all these different ways. Calendars, old calendars, amazing. They just really love all this, right? And so I want them to have any chance to write. And envelopes, amazing. They love envelopes. They love index cards. They just, anything I can put out there. And I try to change it out a lot because then it's something new, right? And they don't have all the choices at once. Oh, Jennifer, thank you so much. She dropped the art center storage link too. I have loved that rolly cart. I just can't even tell you. I get so excited. People come to my room and I'm like, look at my cool rolly cart. And they're like, yeah, great. I don't think they're near as excited, but it really has worked really, really well. Another center I added because I don't know, I love it. Like, I'm mesmerized with it. So if I'm mesmerized with it, my students probably are too. And that's the light table. And we didn't have one of these for a long time because they used to be like super duper expensive. But luckily now it's like, they're not as bad now. And this is like a tabletop one. It doesn't even take up that much room. And so I went to IKEA and I got like one of these really cheap square tables, and that's what we use. And so I have been having fun coming up with different ideas of like what to put on the light table. Like, I'm going through Hobby Lobby, and if it's translucent, it's going in my basket and we're using it, like those translucent little pumpkin scattery things they have during fall. I don't even know what you're supposed to do with them, but for me, they turn into light table materials. And just anything I can find. Like, we've ordered these blocks that are see-through. There's some picture examples in that center guide too, so you can look at that. But this has been one that they find very calming, and I love that. So it's another one of my quiet, I can kind of either work by myself, work with a friend, and that light just seems to be calming, and it's just so super fun. I mean, who doesn't love light up? Oh, sorry about that. And then my last one is my math center. And I basically just these are these tubs that I got from IKEA just because I did not have any tubs that were going to work. And so what I did was I just put the label on there. I just stuck it right on there and taped right over it. No big deal. Packing tape, the clear kind. And then I just stored all my manipulatives in there. And so it's really helpful because I use them sometimes during whole group, so I can just pull the bucket, take it over to whole group. I use them during small group sometimes, same thing, pull the bucket. And then I also let the students use them. And it's so interesting to watch what they do with them, because sometimes naturally they just know to sort the bears by color. It's very interesting. And then I'm like, oh, look, some of these are mommy and daddy's. And then we start sorting them that way. And then dominoes, like what they do with dominoes, the things and how they use them is very interesting to watch. And it's interesting to watch after you use some of the materials that they go, oh, like the measuring tape, like we were measuring and they saw me using it. And so now they're everywhere with that thing, measuring everything. And then on the bottom shelf, there's puzzles. I love adding puzzles in, and just some other games. Like this is one of those things from Lakeshore where you take the magnetic wand and you pull the balls into the number. Just different games that incorporate numbers. So those are my 10 centers that I have right now. I'm not going to tell you I'm like going to keep them that way forever. I feel like you really have to do what works for you and see what your students really love. Maria's asking me where I got the light table. Oh, I don't know. It says it's Guidecraft. I didn't order it. Our director ordered it, and we have like 5 or 6 of them, and I just love them. It's amazing because it's just so portable. And when we do the vet clinic, I love to use this for like x-rays, or the doctors can use it for x-rays. That's super fun too. But yeah, look into that because they're super fun. Okay, so the next thing that I do on my step is step 3, which is to take into consideration some things. Sorry, I'm like flipping through these like a crazy woman. Okay, so some considerations to take, and there's more than just these 3, but these are some pretty big ones, right? The noise factor. Some centers, ooh, Nelly. The drama center in my classroom is super noisy. Like, I actually put them like back in a corner as far away from my small group table, but still where I can keep my eyes on them, because they are just having a ball and they are noisy, right? If you have a music center, that's going to be a noisy one. The block center can be pretty noisy. Mine was until I had them do it basically on the carpet. Before then it was pretty noisy because when things would hit the tile, it was like, whew, pretty noisy. Quiet, some of them are quiet. I like my library center to be quiet. I like the Play-Doh center to be kind of chill. I like the light table center to be kind of chill. And so I've got to think about those noise levels and where I want to put them in the classroom, because I don't want my kiddos trying to just chill and look at a book next to the crazies in pretending to be rainforest explorers in the drama center. Like it just doesn't work, right? It is stressful. And so you have to take into account like how noisy those centers are. And so I like to go through and I like to list on step 3 in this workbook. I like to list my center. I am so bad at getting you guys to see this. And then the noise level. Is it noisy? Is it quiet? Is it neutral? And that can kind of give me an idea of which ones are noisy and quiet. I need to get them apart and then put the neutral ones kind of in the center. Desiree says she makes it a light table part of our science center. Awesome. Yeah. That would totally work too. So noise factor, right? The next one is popularity factor. Like I said, in my classroom, man, oh man, a lot of kids are in the drama center. So I have to give more room to that center, knowing that in the past that has always been a favorite center because there's always new things to explore in there and new roles to play. So I have to make it bigger. So it just keeps kind of taking over, and that's okay because I need to allow for more children to be in there at one time. If I made it tiny and it was still popular, we would have a lot of problems with children trying to play and bumping into each other and just causing chaos. So I'm going to allow more room for them to do their thing in that center. Same with the block center. It seems like they're always there. Someone's always there. And so what I did was just open my block center up to my whole circle time rug, and they can just use that whole rug. And so it gives some kids a chance to space out over here. If they want to go build on their own, they can go over here. They want to build as a group and make this gigantic tower, they've got all this space to do so, and they need that space to build. I can't imagine how frustrating it would be to try to build this massive cool tower in like a itty bitty space. So popularity and size, right? Like I mentioned, the Science Center doesn't need to be real huge. I've not found many of my students go more than two at a time, generally, right? Same with Writing Center. Plus, if you only put 2 chairs there, most of the time, that's how many kids will go there. Unless you got a savvy one that'll pull over a chair. My art center was like crazy rocking last year, and so I would find students dragging chairs over. So I may have to figure out a way to make that even bigger. But there's places you can expand and subtract that area. Play-Doh Center, with it being mobile, that's another one where you can really condense it down if you want to. So the popularity factor. And then the supervision and proximity factor. So when you're sitting at your small group table, if you're doing small group and you're with a small group of students, you need to be able to see what's going on, right? You need to be able to see everybody. And so I like to make sure my table is not up against a wall, but like there's a wall behind me, and there might be a center right behind me, but I can hear them, right? They're literally right behind me. I don't like to put my table smack dab in the middle of the room, because I found that then my head is just constantly swirling trying to watch all the students in all the centers, because even though I'm working at the small group, their safety is important, and I have to make sure that they are all being safe. So having those sight lines. So don't put any tall pieces of furniture up that you can't see over in the way of your sight lines. So that's something to keep in mind too. And then proximity. Maybe it's something you want to keep closer to you. Maybe Play-Doh, you've had bad experiences with Play-Doh in the rug before. That stinks. And maybe you want that closer to you. So that's going to be something that you would move closer to the small group table. Maybe you would want to do supervision with the sensory table, because sometimes they get out of hand. It's kind of a louder center, so that's a little bit harder, but maybe that sight line is really right there for you so that you can keep an eye on that center. It's really about kind of what has worked for you in the past. And if this is your first year, just take some tips from here and just try your best with it, right? Try to read the comments here. Do kids pick the center, or do you assign? I do not assign. I love that they get to go from center to center and choose what they adore. Since we are preschool and not yet a kindergarten, I don't like to limit that. I don't like to say you have to go here, because I found it actually creates more problems. I did that my very first year, and it was like, I don't want to go here. I don't like it here. I don't have anything to do. And it was just constantly creating these problems. And so when I opened it up to go, hey, you're free to go where you want. But I always make sure to find something new and exciting to put in different centers. Like, I want it to be inviting. So most of the time I will find that, yeah, you might live more in the block center because your mind works as a little architect, but I've also found you over in the writing center because you found something interesting that caught your eye, type of thing. So I like to find ways to encourage them to move out of that space, but also know that that may be where they're at. That may be what makes sense to them. If I've got a kiddo who's very artsy, who's constantly in that art center, that's where they're at right now. And how can I add in more things to the art center that maybe would be math, writing based, So I really like to leave that open to them, because I feel like the choice where they play is a personal choice for them, and it's not for me to say so. And that's just my personal belief. And so she asked, what about cleanup? So we have a cleanup helper that rings the bell. We talked about that last Monday, and everybody cleans up everywhere. I try to get my kids to clean up before they leave the center. It's not always the easiest thing to do when you're trying to do small groups, but by the end, we're a classroom community. We are all cleaning up together. And sometimes you'll get like, I didn't play there, so I didn't make that mess. Well, we're all a classroom. We're all going to clean it up together. Let's see who can help this person clean up this mess. And that's how we go about it. And it's worked just fine. Let's see. Next up is this like space factor. One of my rooms, not the one I'm in now, but the one before that, was super tiny. Like so tiny that I only could have 8 students and not 10 like I normally have because of its size. So I had to get real creative, and that's where I, was doing the rolly carts for the Play-Doh and Same with the math. The math manipulatives didn't have their own little space. They had to be rolled around where we needed them. And so it's really just getting as creative as you can with these centers. And once you list them out, you can kind of go, oh, okay, I could totally put this one in a rolly cart or in some tubs, right? But others, like the art center, they're going to need a space to create that art. And they're going to need materials to pretend within the drama center. So it's kind of looking at them once you have them all written out and seeing like, what does it really need? What will it really take? Because every center having its own space may not be something that you can accomplish if your room is tiny. And that's what I found. Like, you can do a lot, but you can only do so much with the space you're given. And so also using that space. And let me show you a picture of now. Okay, so this one is what I planned to do last year. I didn't use it. I didn't like where I had the art center in the library. I actually had to switch some things, and it's always a work in progress. But I wanted to show you how I use like this blocks in the center. There's a blue rectangle. It says blocks, and it's pointing towards the carpet area because that's the way that I had it open. So they use the block stuff at the carpet area, and then behind it I used that as like almost like a partition. And so then they kind of knew like, okay, this is another center over on this side. I actually had two over there. So using your furniture in the best way you can to kind of break it up, because children know no boundaries. If you've ever been touched on the bum by a child, you know that they just don't have boundaries, right? And so we can kind of create those boundaries naturally for them with furniture, or if you must, even just tape. I'm one that really likes to make sure that things stay in a center. If I notice they're bringing things over, like they love to bring this stuff from the sensory table over into the drama center to pretend to cook with it. And so I was like, fine, we'll just come up with some little things for you to put in there to cook with. So I just did that. And that way the sensory stuff can stay in the sensory table and it won't make as big of a mess, right? And so I like to try to keep them as contained as I can, but also realizing that sometimes they're needing those materials other places. And so I try to provide those materials in other places too. But I like to keep them kind of separated, the centers, that is. And so if you're like that, you may want to look at how your furniture can help you do that. If you really just don't care if they take things from one place to another and you just want to have real free open centers, and that may not be something that you have to worry about. But it's something to take into consideration. And then the last consideration is the racetrack factor. So in this picture, you can probably see my racetrack, right? I have one in there. They're going to go over the carpet area, around the block center, and in between the table and the block center, right? And I decided, and I'm just going to try it. We'll see, right? My class the year before was such race car drivers. It was crazy. I couldn't have this set up. But this year I was like, I'm just going to try. I'm going to be a rebel. I'm going to see if anybody finds my racetrack. They didn't until January. We had a new student come and she found it real darn fast. And so then the rest of them found it and they're running. Any free time that they had, they spent running. So that had to change. So the racetrack factor is real. I remember in my grandma's house, she had a racetrack too. It was like a circle in her house that went through her kitchen, dining room, living room, hall. And I found that. I remember my cousins finding it, and then my kids found it. So it's just like something very natural for kids. And so if we can kind of nip that in the bud before it happens, because it can obviously create problems, running in the classroom is dangerous. And so if we can stop that problem before we start it, which I was good to go for most of the year, y'all. And then it all went downhill. So being flexible, right? We're always flexible. So those are the factors I like to go through when I am planning it out. And so this sheet again is nice because you can do the proximity. Do I want it close to me? And then you can also list the furniture that you're going to use in there. And then the last step is basically just mapping it out. And I never have one map, right? I'm always constantly erasing, moving, and trying to figure out what's going to work best. But there's blank space in there, and I use that. And I just like to keep all this together because some years I get new furniture, and that's amazing, and other years I don't. And so like this year, I'm in the same room, and I'm going to keep some things the same. Like my art center is rocking where it's at. Block center, same. I didn't overly love where my science center was, so that may be changing. And so like, it's just some things for me to think about. And then I have to take all these things into consideration too. So that, I was going to show you this. So this is what is at the link that Jennifer dropped for you, and it should also be in the description of this post. I hope it is. I'll double check it. But there's the workbook that I use to run down everything, and then there's the guide to preschool centers. That these are the centers that I use, the 10 of them. They all have pictures and core materials that I use, and then any learning goals as well. So that is at that link. You can sign up for that, and I will go ahead and answer some questions. I'm going to kind of make sure I didn't skip any here. Desiree, I don't have any more cubbies to square off the areas to compartmentalize the areas. The areas are definitely defined, and there are shelves pushed up against the wall with other furniture to define to make a square. I can't quite totally picture it, Desiree. I'm a very visual person. So you'll kind of have to decide. One thing I found was like I struggled with putting on the at first I struggled with putting all the furniture up against the wall. And then I found if I just turn it out and kind of make it a partition, that's been super helpful. Do you have any other tables that children sit at for snack? Yeah. So like our small group table isn't big enough for all 10 students to sit at. And so I have to make sure that the art center is clean, and I have to wipe that off so that they can go and sit there. Yeah, that's a good question, Amy. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, and we don't have enough space at our one table. And so they have to use another table as well. And it's worked out okay. I mean, is it perfect? No. Sometimes I'm cleaning glue off the table before they can eat their snack, but it is what it is. Linda, we have limiting name tags they put in the center poster. When they're done in the area, they take their limiting tag with them. Yeah, so I had to do that when I had my really small classroom, because I found that even though I wanted to make my drama center big, there just wasn't room to make it big. I made it as big as I could to fit everything else in, but it just did not fit more than 4 students. It just wasn't going to work. And so I have them on my website too, but I had limiting name tags too. So there was like a poster, it had a 4 on it, there was 4 little washers, and their name tag had a magnet on the back, and they would go up and put it on there. Now it wasn't easy to manage. I mean, I had one student that would just be like, I want to go here, so he'd take his name take one kid's name tag off, hand it to him, be like, you're done, and he'd put his up. Well, that was savvy of you, but that's not how that's going to work. And so there was definitely a monitoring factor on it that I didn't love, but I almost felt it absolutely necessary, because it was like everybody wanted to be in that center, and that there was just not room for everybody in there. And so, Linda, I've been in that boat too, and I just did what I had to do. And some of them didn't have to have limits, but like some of them did. There's 2 chairs, and that's how many kids can be here right now. And sometimes, that's okay. It's okay for them to have to wait. It's okay for them to have to take their turn. And also, sometimes I would have to get out to the timer, because some friends wanted to take much longer turns, the whole center time if they could. And so, yes, that was something that I had to do too. Let's see. I answered that one. Let's make sure I didn't miss any questions. Jennifer loves her light table. I do too. What is it about that thing? It's just so beautiful. I like to take pictures of it. It's strange. With the present pandemic, yes. Is there anything you suggest? This is so hard. I'm in Missouri, and I'm like a little bit south of Kansas City, and we're pretty rural, and we have just not had the cases. And so our center actually never had to close. We were open to just essential workers there for a while. But we are not in that space yet. We're taking precautions, but we're not in the absolute space of these are your requirements. And so it's so hard, because we're all going to be all over the page. I've read about some of the requirements that some of you have in your states or in your centers or in your school districts, and they're major, man. That's going to be hard in a preschool. And I will definitely be thinking of you, because that's hard. And I may be there later. I don't know. We never know what's going to happen, especially right now, right? And so some of those centers might have to be limited. Like Maria's saying, cleaning the sensory tub. The Play-Doh. Maybe you put names on the Play-Doh, and this is your Play-Doh you get to work with. You get to pick your favorite color. It stinks, but at least they're still in that classroom setting with you. And you may have to do the limiting amount of kids just to keep the distancing. You may have to do that. You may have to just take out sensory. You may be able to, which is one thing I do in my small group that might work, is just have individual sensory tubs, right? And maybe you clean that one, and then a new kiddo can try it out. It's going to take so much creativity, and it's hard because I feel like we already do that all the time. And so we're getting another challenge thrown at us. And so some of these, you may have to go, I can't do this center right now because I have to do this, I have to, and just know that that's okay. You're doing what's best for kids always because you're trying to keep them safe. And right now we aren't having to plan 6 feet apart for our students because I just don't even know how that's possible. Amy's saying, thank you for the pandemic question. We are in Seattle, Washington. If we can go back, it's incredible. Yeah, 6 feet apart, no soft goods, all facing one direction, masks over age 2 years old. That is so rough, Amy. I'm not sure how that's going to look for you. And I'm sure that you have the exact same scary thoughts about 3 and 4 year olds wearing masks and facing one direction. I've also struggled with, what are you going to say to a kiddo that runs up to you and wants to hug you? And you're like, no, 6 feet, can't hug you. Like, it's just so rough with this age group because they don't get it. And quite frankly, we just hate that we would even have to put that fear in them. And so I, of course, don't have the answers to any of that. But I do want you to know that I'm thinking about you. And I just really pray that we all can get through this so our kiddos can get back to these classrooms. And now more than ever, you're planning out your classroom setup is probably going to be important, because if you have to cut back on some of your centers because they have soft goods in them, or they're like the Play-Doh center and the sensory center, those may have to come out for a while, or you may have to find a creative solution for those. And right now where I am, we are not at that place, but I am totally aware that we may be at some point. And so having those own thoughts of what is that going to look like, and what are our cleaning procedures going to look like. And we're already limiting things. We're already limiting class exposure when they cross, no classes are coming together, parents out of the building to bring less germs, things like that. But yes, Amy, it's a great question. And I think now more than ever, you can maybe use this to go, okay, what is mandatory of me to do to keep these kids safe? And it may not look like my traditional classroom, and that stinks, but it is where we're living right now. And so I'm hoping I can help you at least in that area. Since I'm not having to live it yet, I don't have those full hands-on ideas, but if anybody watching does, feel free to share so that we can all just make our environment the best we can and the safest we can where we're living right now. So I'm so sorry I don't have I wish I had a magic wand and can fix it. Janine says, I had 17 kids in my class last year. How do you keep kids out of your carts when they aren't doing centers? Yeah, that's a lot of kids. When they aren't doing centers, I'm assuming you're meaning when they're at the carpet or things like that. We very much just come to know that cart is part of a center. Just like we don't go and play in the drama center or the block center when we're at carpet time, or when we're doing snack time and things like that. I just treat it as a center. I hope that answers your question. So if there are any other questions, I will try to answer them in the comments, but I really hope this is helpful to you, and I really hope it's something that you can use when you're trying to just take in all those considerations, because it sounds like it should be easy enough. Just go in your classroom and set it up. I'm going to my classroom, I'm going to set it up. But it seems to take me days, and I think it's because we just have so many things to fit in and so many considerations to take in to make sure that it is a safe place for children to learn and grow and play. And so thank you for joining me today. I very much appreciate it, and I hope that this can be helpful to you. So I will see you very soon. Bye-bye.